Oh no, I was just.
All right, welcome. We're excited to have you back, and those of you who joined us, we're excited to stand here so the shade is for a second. I'll move. We're excited to have you here. This is one of the exciting things that we get to do here at the Shakespeare Festival. That the director, and in this case the adapter, or the writer. What would you prefer? What's the proper term?
Slash.
So yeah, slash of the Tavern is here, John Henry, and we're very excited to hear what you have to say. I know he's excited to hear what you have to say, and please feel free to ask him questions. I'll be passing the microphone around, and I want to start to ask the first question, which is, can you explain to me the process of how you came to do the Tavern and your first experience with it as a play, and how we got to here?
Gotta have your mic.
Yeah, great. Sure, I can. Actually, the first time I worked on a production of the Tavern was a little over 20 years ago, 22 years ago, and I did it at the Milwaukee Repertory Theater. And that adaptation was set in Wisconsin, and it was a very different, take on it, comedic and a lot of the same ideas. But in the production was a very young Brian Vaughn, who played Zach, the tavern keeper's kid. And also in the production was Andrew May, who played the vagabond last night. And in that production, Andrew was Tom Allen, the fiance. But in all of the time that I've been in all the productions I've done at the Utah Shakespeare Festival, Brian every once in a while would say, hey, maybe we could revive that here. And I suggested an Old West kind of setting. And when I had worked on the play before, I'd taken a lot of liberties with the script, well, a lot of liberties. And decided I could go further with it here. After 20 years had passed. I mean, I think I actually matured a little bit as a writer, and I just had a little bit more confidence in that area. So the idea of trying to make it specific and something that the audience in the festival would enjoy. That it was very much directed towards being here at the festival. So we had specific Utah setting. I added the Shakespeare quotes for the vagabond. I tried to write the rest of his speeches in a heightened style. Shakespeare probably at his most bombastic sort of verse that was trochaic, rather than iambic, in which Shakespeare uses for some of the more purple prose things in some of the histories and the tragedies. A lot of alliterations kind of to excess, and hoping that would have a comedic effect. And that's all how it all came to be.
Okay. Sir?
The alliterations and the excesses were just marvelous. I just loved every bit of it. I probably didn't get most of it, but what I got, I really loved. Just a technical question.
The actors loved it after they learned it. It was demanding.
The sticking door, it got stickier at the end.
Yeah.
And a remarkable effect. That was all scripted, or is that?
That was not scripted.
So it really did stick, and then he.
No, when Jamie said we got to get that door fixed, that was Jamie talking. That was not the character talking.
Voice change.
Yeah.
Well, he worked it well.
Yeah, actually, it wasn't the door. What happened is a little bit of the flooring came up a little bit. So the door is kind of tight at the bottom because we've got so many lighting cues. We didn't want to see too much light. It's all technical at the bottom of the door. So it's the margin probably only just about a quarter inch. And one of those little plankings just got kicked up about a quarter inch and kept sticking. Everybody assumed it was the door. Actually, somebody like that would have been fixed. That's what we did.
I love the chairs.
Yeah.
The blowing of the chairs. Who was that? Was it somebody local that did that, or is that well established?
Oh, that was right in the shops here.
Yeah.
The moving furniture was something we'd done in the production all those many years ago. A slightly different system for it here, but yeah, no, there's little catches in the furniture that catching some tracks that are pneumatic and high technology for an old play, but it's there's some things down in the base of the deck that carries them. Trial and a lot of painful error making it work.
I just have to say, we thoroughly enjoyed it. It was just a delightful surprise. It was far more than I expected. I wasn't sure what to expect, but we just thoroughly enjoyed it. I would have to rank it in probably the top 10 of my favorite plays here that I've ever seen. It was just really fantastic.
Oh, that's great.
I am so curious though about more of the history of the original play and how that morphed into what it became. And you talked a little bit about your process of adapting it, but where did it start out, and what was the original material for the original play? Well,
George M. Cohan wrote the play. He bought a script from another author, kept very little of it. I just was walking by the other day, so I heard Ryan kind of giving one of his speeches, but I think he said there's like 8 lines or something that he wound up keeping. Cohan wrote a lot of plays, but he sort of needed a starter to work with. I mean, he didn't feel confident, I guess, inventing plots, something I can identify with. So, oddly enough, I mean, he paid, I don't know, a large amount of money at the time. I'm $40,000, something, 10 times that now, or more, for the rights to the play. It kept none of it. And it was a serious play.
That was my question, is that the original play was intended to be played straight and serious.
Yeah, I forget what it was, something about a Superman or something like that, but it was the idea of a Nietzsche-esque sort of character that comes into the tavern and changes the life in a much more philosophical vein. So he married it to slightly earlier than his time. This was in the 20s. A little bit more late 19th century melodrama. And the artifice of the play was foregrounded to comic effect. And I kept the same story. So the linear progression of events is quite similar. There's a few little departures, but hardly any of the language is the same. So it was as much a translation into the new era, and try to work on the Old West kind of theme, and changed a lot of the language. On the original production, actually, that was the big change in some ways, that I wrote different dialogue for all of the people in the tavern and the governor's party, but kept probably about 70 or 80% of Cohan's dialogue for the vagabond. In this one, partly sort of inspired by the Shakespearean setting. I tried to kind of use that and try to make it noticeable but logical progressions between his own language, so that he wouldn't stop and be delivering a quote. So that was just kind of going over it and over it. And of course, you get the pleasure of reading all the plays, only looking for stuff that's of value to you in your play.
Brilliantly done.
Oh, thanks. You guys are so great. I have to say that going into the first preview, we all agreed on one thing, that we were not in any way ready to share this play on one sense. But at the other hand, we learned so much last night. The audience was so generous all the way through. And, I would say that, 98% of what they said last night is what we wrote, and every once in a while there was, I don't know what to say next, and I'll just keep talking and somebody help me out. We had a very challenging, one of the pleasures of doing the last play that joins the repertoire, and I've actually done that twice this year in 2 different theaters in the summer, is that when you come into the company's been working together for the whole summer, and in this case, I'd actually worked with about half the actors in different places and here, so that there's a wonderful esprit that the actors share, and just a great ease. On the downside, they're very tired, And because there's 6 plays running in repertory, your opportunity, and they're all in different plays, so your opportunity to rehearse is occasional at best. So by the time actually we moved into the theater, we had barely rehearsed all of the scenes in the order that they went. And then there was a lot of technical stuff that it takes a long time to figure out, which we're still figuring out all the way through this. So yeah, the idea of getting the energy from an audience and one that was so shamelessly biased to our success in the way that responded was a great help to a great boost to us. So thank you so much.
We're back here.
Since that was a preview, how did you feel about it? And if we came to see it in another couple of weeks, how different would it be?
Much better, cleaner. I shouldn't say that. You have the adrenaline of actors, and no performance in the entire run is more important to them than particularly this one, which has quirky senses of humor, and how it's going to land, and sort of how we can manage the beast in some way is a focus going forward. But lots of things will smooth out, will be cleaner. I think it'll have more forward momentum in places. You know, there were dips in how we could sustain the energy. How, you know, in a comedy challenge, is always not just to make it funny, but to make it exponentially more funny as it progresses. And so that's what, you know, we have to kind of sort of strategize. You know, where to put a foot on the gas, where to back off. You know, where the peaks and the valleys are. You know, that's like, you know, we got, they did just, it's great, but we're still learning. Lots of, you know, lots of nervous energy will sort of be focused energy in the performances that come.
I sat all the way house left, so I could barely see the window. Obviously, there were some funny things flying by. Could you tell me what I missed?
What did you see?
Something white, and I guess I mean I could just see figures, could not see anything distinctive, but everybody to my right was just laughing.
Yeah, there were farm implements and things that went by in the wind. There's a duck, which is still being worked on. Actually, I saw, as I walked over here this morning, I saw our prop master cradling it in his arms, taking it over to the shop to do some surgery on it. But the duck flies against the wind, gives up and flies away. Zach looks up, and hopefully the timing will be a little bit better. Gets a little disheartened that the duck can't fly against the wind, and that's our opening. The key things that sort of our story points: Tom's smoking jacket flies away in the wind. Wiley's scarf flies away in the wind after he takes a lot of care to wrap it up, and Cactus the cat, which we talked about, makes a brief, all too brief appearance last night against the window before he flies away. See little things like that. A windmill goes by, a scythe, and stuff like that. Yeah.
I'd really like to know, you know, what you have learned. I mean, you've gone to a little bit, but I would be really interested in what you've learned from the preview that you might be thinking about changing. And I have to make one comment for myself and how I saw it. I really like the second act of after the intermission better. I can't exactly tell you why, except that I felt in prior to intermission, you know, there was a lot of excitement and there was a lot of shouting, and I guess I don't appreciate shouting very much. And that may be very personal to me, but it felt like there wasn't a lot of subtlety. I realized there was a lot going on and they're trying to heighten, you know, the situation, but it felt to me like a lot of shouting.
Yeah, I don't know that I even disagree. You know, there's a lot of hyped up energy when we go into it. How to the challenge is to start off with a sort of extreme situation where the wind, of course, is something that we need to power over. So, it's always a question of, you may be speaking loud, but you're not speaking in somebody's general vicinity. You're speaking to them, hopefully even through them, in the intensity, and finding that balance, I think, is one of the things that we can learn. In terms of what we would change, at this stage of the game, it's about refining what we've got. Rather, I don't know that we have the luxury of being able to sit down and I can look at a few text things and change them, and that might be very good for the play, but at this stage of the game, it's not so good for the production, just in terms of where we are with a learning curve. So we will be just refining everything we've got. And in terms of your observation, which I think is well taken, just learning to relax. Like I said, we were in a heightened state. The other thing is, honestly, they're warriors out there, thoroughbred warriors going out there. Just about 3/4 of the way through, and they have a matinee of Midsummer Night's Dream today before we work tonight. USF gets every penny's worth out of these actors. I can say, which is great. They love it. But about 3/4 of the way through, when you're exhausted, it tends to get bigger rather than subtler. Because you're compensating. Just feeling that you just, boy, I got to get through this, and there's a lot of big stuff to come. Yeah, good. Yeah, good.
Just a couple of things. I thought the best and most spontaneous laugh came when the governor's wife said something about rough children and you still respect his wife.
Yeah.
I love that. Don't lose the spontaneity of that. And,
No, it's fun.
yeah. And the other thing, I found myself wanting to get on that stage and see if I could make that illusion from the wind coming through the door. I would like to.
Oh, it's fun. Yeah.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite lines. Actually, that's a little story that might be amusing about the line. Did he ever think of his wife? In the original, that's actually Cohan's dialogue. But the line is actually delivered by the vagabond rather than a woman in it. And the emphasis is, did he ever think of his wife, meaning that he couldn't leave her alone? As opposed to switching it over, and obviously just
It worked.
Yeah, no, it does. Yeah, it's fun. It's fun. Yeah. So there are lots. In some cases, you just kind of see a way that we can rearrange something that sort of fits with our modern sensibilities about things. Too.
I have a question while these folks are thinking of their next question. And again, we invite you to ask whatever questions you'd like. So be thinking about that. We had a question in the seminar this morning about the process of design and creation, and from kind of your vision, who communicates the vision, what relationship do you have with the artistic direction here? How exactly does that process work from the beginning to where we end up on the stage?
Yeah, every artistic partnership, works a little bit differently. In this case, the set designer Linda Buchanan and I, this is her debut at the Utah Shakespeare Festival, but Linda and I have worked on several plays in several theaters around the country. So, the only member of the design team that I hadn't worked with before is Kirk Bookman, who designed the lights. Barry Funderburg, who designed all of the sound, has been here at the Utah Festival a lot, but we've done literally 20 or 30 plays together over a long period of time, where I used to work at the Milwaukee Rep and in various places. Kari Kapishki, who designed the costumes and worked with for decades, and actually live in a very small community in rural Wisconsin, and Karen also and her husband also live up there. So we have a chance to talk, over a long period of time. In this case, because I was writing the script, I wrote fairly explicit stage directions about the moving furniture, about the stuff that was moving through, and we talk a lot about the function of the play, and then we share a lot of images. The things I told Linda that were influences in the writing were, of course, the original play. A little clip from a Buster Keaton silent film called Steamboat Bill Jr. And if you've ever seen a cyclone sequence where everything is blowing through and buildings are blowing down and Buster Keaton is sort of nonplussed by it. There's even one thing where a door frame, blows over him, and this is him. There's a bed that goes away from him, and that kind of classic comic Harold Lloyd, Buster Keaton, Chaplin-esque kind of physical humor was something that was an inspiration for how to tell the story. So we work together just in terms of how the physical layout of the stage could work, and how the exaggeration of those heightening of those effects could work in the same inspiration or the same stylistic way as those classic comedians. Obviously, Shakespeare was an influence in Southern Utah. Films, I read an awful lot of pulp fiction, westerns, and then on the darker side of it, some of the Quentin Tarantino western films. The Hateful Eight was sort of an influence in that. Costumes, certainly. So we're drawing from a lot of different kinds of collage of things and trying to put them into a whole. The best conversations are when everybody can get together, over a table, a coffee house somewhere in Chicago, because a lot of us are from the Midwest, and just share ideas. And then we come. Then here at the festival, we interact with the shops. It was back in November. We have a design conference for a couple of days here. One of the things that they were very generous with us here is they've obviously usually wanted one designer to go all the way through the season, so that everything is coordinated with the repertory. In this case, because I've worked with Linda a lot, and because I had a very busy year directing, and it was just much better because she and I could be together a lot through doing some other projects together. They were really helpful in letting us work it out. But then we have a big meeting with all of the production shops, talk about where we're going. We don't have anything designed yet, but where we're going conceptually, and how it can work, and how it has to rep. It has to get rid of that big set this morning, so that the Midsummer Night's Dream can be up here. So the logistical parts of that. Budget is a factor, big factor. Crew size, all of those logistics that come into it. It's a lot. Yeah, it's a very collective process.
Okay, I'm just making sure you were done.
I'm done.
Okay.
Speaking of the physicality and the choreography of what goes on there, Kelly and Melinda going up the stairs. Is that in the script that way, or did you come up with that, or did they come up with that because it was brilliantly done? Especially the second half, where she threw one leg behind Melinda's to hoist it up, and then picked her up, and then moved the leg again.
That piece of business is 3 days old.
Is it really?
We experiment, but we're in a flat floor there. We knew that Kelly would get Melinda up the stairs somehow.
That was great.
I wrote a line in there that gave her lots of time. That's all I knew, was that however we got her to the top of that stairs was going to take a good chunk of time. So I wrote a line in that said, "I'm working on it, Mr. Freeman." I didn't know exactly what she was going to be working on specifically. Then we have a wonderful fight director, choreographer, both of them, Robert Wesley, who worked with us all the way, through the process. And I worked with Robert on Julius Caesar last year, and I met him here at the Utah Festival, and we've done some other things in some other theaters since. In that case, we had we had one, she was laboring her way up, actually carrying her, and we had some business where she fell off and she got her back up. Once we got in there, actually Robert had to go back to New York for a few days. We sort of came up with the general idea once, because we'd gotten into the theater, about having to use the railing. They were,
Great.
yeah, it was, yeah. And then that took a while, because then they had to kind of do the railing so it would allow us to do that. And honestly, that was being worked on in the afternoon before the preview last night.
Well done.
So,
Who has another question? Right, back here.
Is this going to be the definitive version of your adaptation, especially with the Shakespearean allusions? I'm sure that all the Shakespeare reps would be interested in this.
I hope that's true. Yeah, I haven't sent it out yet. But yeah, just chatting with some of the other artistic directors at some of the other festivals, there is an interest to see the script when we get it all together. It probably won't be specifically Utah. I like the Old West theme, so certainly that that will help.
So if say Oregon takes it,
yeah.
Obviously you would need Oregonian references in there. Would you put those in there? Would you leave that up to the company?
Yeah, I'm willing to talk, but there aren't that many really. As I put it in, I mean, the things that say specifically Utah, there's a few little things, and so I would probably encourage producers in those little places to make things definitive. Often, I've done some other adaptations for the Utah Festival here that have gone out to other theaters. In some cases, I direct them, and hopefully if they get enough life, other people are directing them. So, it's, I like to empower the other directors to make choices. So I don't really want to be overly dictatorial as to how that is, but there is a concept, so I usually kind of write a little essay or something about what I think really makes it work, and to sort of set a compass for them to make their own creative decisions. But the things like we were just talking about, how we're going to get up the stairs. I mean, they have to figure that out. I mean, I usually put a little preface. This is how we did it in the premiere production, and that was our solution. And that kind of gives a little bit of guidance as to what works. But if somebody's trying to slavishly duplicate, it doesn't always have that spontaneity that ultimately makes it work.
How about the process of when you direct something that you did not write, and bringing your creative insight into it while also respecting the author's intent?
Yeah, that's it's hard to. I can give you a sort of a compass as to the way I feel. If it's a recent play, and I can get in touch with the author, I always love to have and I actually wind up recently doing maybe the second or third production of plays, and a lot of times I know the author pretty well. It's a small world in the theater. So I definitely arrange a conversation, or if possible, if we can be in the same place, a long meeting, and talk over, what's really important to them, what's not important to me, and have their have their approval of anything that I want to change, not in the text, but in the station. And sometimes, every once in a while, if it's fairly new, I could say, there's one thing that doesn't quite jive for me, and they say, yeah, we never worked that out. So sometimes, small things we can work out. Once the play has a life, if it's still not a public domain play, a classic Arthur Miller play or something like that, then I think having an innovative idea on the staging sometimes is something that helps sort of keep the play contemporary, just in terms of the theatricality of it, not in the theme. of the play or where they're really salient ideas. Once it's in the public domain, once it's in Shakespeare, then it's public domain. We own it in some ways, and I feel like whatever serves the play, then that becomes a matter of taste and how faithful we could be. I mean, our job with classical plays, I think, is to take the integrity of the writing and make it matter to people and find the themes and the ideas in the play that really most capture the pulse of what people are concerned about. So you're always trying to make a classic play talk to a modern audience by finding things that are not just universal, but sometimes specific, and I think that makes a play resonant. So it really depends on where it is. But particularly a modern play that is just out. I think the first few productions should closely hew to the playwright's visual as well as thematic intent.
I have a question for you, one that's come up before. How do you direct a trained actor to overact? It would seem to me that that's a challenge, that someone who's trained not to be melodramatic, to be melodramatic.
Yeah. Overact. Try to find a style, and in a melodrama or in a farce, it's real. Everything is real. It may not be naturalistic, but it's about focusing on the intention that the actor has, which right in front of them. And in a melodrama, in a naturalistic play, we say you have to really be very selective about what's important. In a melodrama, more of it's important. Just about everything is important. So you start from important and you go to very important, but there's not too much you can throw away in there because everything is concise. And how we can find a way that the body as well as the voice as well as the intention is really glued on one narrow thing. Wiley just wants an answer to that one question. He just wants Sally Mae. He may have an internal life that's other than those two things, but we don't care about it. That's all we care about, so it's everything else is pared away. So I don't necessarily think about it being big in that sense, but pared down and very narrowly targeted. So they're unaware of any other things, and so there's that little focus. That's one of our vocabularies in the rehearsal process.
So acting in a melodramatic fashion really is focusing on very specific things at the expense of everything else.
Yeah, and we have to invent it. This whole thing about style as a received style. I mean, this is a mashup of a whole bunch of different influences, and so there's not a received sort of notion as to what by received I mean historically received notions to what the style is. We need to make it up in the room, and that's a great thing if you can get all the actors in the room at the same time. You can always have the opportunity, but yes, it goes like that. We find a moment, we like it. We can't articulate exactly what we're doing and what we're going for, but in very specific, tangible goals that the character is trying to achieve. And so, like I said, I think the heightening is the stripping away of everything that's not that sometimes, and just being really clear. We sometimes, so part of the style is like a Jimmy Cagney thing. Stand up straight, look the other guy straight in the eye, and just demand what you want and tell the truth. Everything else, nothing else is important.
Some years ago, apparently, you dealt with a young actor, Zach, in the Tavern.
Yeah.
Brian Vaughn. What do you recognize? I mean, the qualities you like in an actor. Did you recognize anything special in him, or actors that you have to direct?
Yeah.
What are some of the qualities you really appreciate? Having seen a bunch of actors in the Tavern last night. Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, they are.
The qualities of an actor, particularly maybe someone starting into the field, what you're looking for.
Yeah. No, I auditioned Brian when he was a student at the university and was, in the summer. He was playing one of the Dromios in Comedy of Errors years ago. They have a program in the summer where they bring artistic directors in to the theater to audition the actors. And Brian was one of those. And I had a close friend who was teaching here at the time, Lori Birmingham. I think maybe the times that she's acted here years ago. And she was teaching Brian. She said he was great. I auditioned him and liked him a lot. We got together a little bit and did some more stuff. And so I actually brought him to the Milwaukee Rep for a full year as a member of our company. And he wanted to stay all until, I don't know, 10 years ago. He was in the last play I did at the Rep, which was also an original play that he played the lead in. We had a long friendship and career. It's hard to, the quality, clarity, confidence, a sense of humor, a good physical awareness, a generosity, somebody you're going to want to spend a lot of time with. Just the same qualities you look for in your friends and mates.
Who's got another question? Because I don't want to keep monopolizing the questions. Oh.
I would like to introduce Alex Connington, who is the assistant director on this production. And maybe people would be interested in what an assistant director does. I don't know. If you would like to say, they might be interested in it.
Alex came out here with you from Wisconsin.
Yeah, I know Joe from Milwaukee. We've known each other socially for a few years, but haven't worked together. And my regular summer gig, the director that I usually assist in the summer had the year off. So I gave Joe a call and this worked out, which is great. So I'm happy to be here for the first time. As an assistant director, there's a lot of sort of little subtle refining things that I'm doing. I'm taking a lot of Joe's notes. Last night you might have seen us sitting in the very last row, and I was on my laptop. He was just whispering things into my ear as I furiously wrote them down. But a lot of it is Joe and I having conversations about the play and what's working and what isn't working and how we can fix that, and then going into rehearsal and just being a really, I like to think of it as a really useful second pair of eyes. I would say that's pretty good encapsulation of it.
We have a question back here.
Just a quick question on the vocal work, because you have a whole bunch of different people from different parts of the country coming together at that tavern. What was the process of going through and figuring out exactly which accent people would have, from where, how thick, how light? If you can speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, in the script, I actually tried to write an I dialect. I mean, by that, the contractions and a lot of the tavern dwellers are somewhat phonetically written in the dialogue. So, I had that sort of in my ear. And then once we started, we had a vocal coach, Leslie Brock, who was an actress here at the festival, who would come in when she could. She had did a lot of individual work with the actors because she was in 2 plays, and she was in 3 plays. So so her time actually to watch rehearsals was she was able to watch some run-throughs and watch us in the theater. She took copious notes, very valuable, very clear notes, and sent them out on the email to the actors every night, and maybe 2 or 3 pages long. And that a lot of that's just not only on the accuracy of the accent, but on intelligibility in the fast and furious, sometimes shouted, quality of the language. Where we could close a consonant, even though it was not necessarily in the dialect, but what is necessary for intelligibility. Yeah. it's a physical comedy. You've got to understand every word to know what the physicality is all about. Could you understand most of it? All of it? Yeah, yeah. That's no small thing. There's a lot of sound in the show, and there's a lot of fast and furious physical activity. So I have to say that a whole bunch of the staging has to do with getting the head clear and the voice downstage, even though they're doing a whole bunch of stuff.
Great. We have time for maybe one more question before the prop seminar. Does anybody have it? Because if not, I'll take it. You have it? Great.
Just a comment more than a question. And I think what I enjoyed so much about it, I was expecting a farce and I was expecting this sort of comic melodrama, but it was all, like, every character on that stage really believed that they were in that situation. It was not played for comedy, and so the heart was still there in the middle of it. And you really felt for all the characters, and that was what I was not expecting. It just made it all that more enjoyable.
It's a great ensemble. With all of the challenges that we had, which are all like rehearsal time, really, and trying to put together all the physical production, I can't imagine an entire company of people being more supportive and more generous with each other. I mean, comedy, just so much, it is about the generosity of the actors, because for every laugh, there's an assist. In terms of how a line is delivered, how we need to kind of work together and kind of look at where it's likely to pay off. So a funny answer is not funny unless the question being asked is really important, and how we can set all of that up. And they're all so savvy, just so stage savvy, and kind of know where that is, and like I said, just a generosity and spirit. And they're exhausted. I gotta say, this is the marathon period. This is the final couple miles of the marathon they've been running all summer, and still, we're having a good time. So, that's really to their credit.
In conclusion, I would be very interested, while you're both up there, and you've lived with this play for.
Well, I started writing it. Brian talked to me about doing it on the first day of rehearsal of Julius Caesar last year. So I directed what, 6 productions and 8 productions in the meantime. So yeah, I've been living with it sort of at late nights and early mornings.
So both of you living with this for a while, I'm curious as to what you individually would like the takeaway to be from the audiences as they leave the theater from this production. What is your hopeful takeaway from them?
That it was one of the top 10 productions ever seen at the Utah Shakespeare Festival.
Good. Go ahead. What do you think?
Second. Yeah.
The second production?
No, I would, also that. I think that's a great way to end.
Great. Well, thank you very much for being here. Thanks to our artistic team here. We hope that you enjoy your time at the Utah Shakespeare Festival. I would let you know that the prop seminar will start here in about 10 minutes over at the Ames Theater. And then we have some shows the rest of the time. Thank you. Could we get a round of applause for our folks there, and enjoy your stay. Thank you very much.
Thanks for your help.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I remember you telling me that. I didn't put together yet.
Thank you, Tom. But you gotta laugh. My son. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.